Would counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
If you could please rise
please
and
rise.
raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Henry Thomas French Jr. Do you want me to spell it?
Yes.
HenryThomas Jr.
Thank you.
So you may be seated.
Good afternoon, Mr. French. Can you tell the jury where you live?
I live at 6 Jefferson Crossing, Farmington, Connecticut,
How long have you lived at 6 Jefferson Crossing?
since 2007.
Since 2007, have you come to be familiar with Fotis Dulos?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury how you came to know Fotis Dulos?
Fotis Dulos was the general contractor who built our house. So I first met him in 2006.
From 2006 until about 2019, had you seen Mr. Dulos on occasion?
Yes.
And you're familiar with what he looks like?
Yes, I am.
In 2019, were you familiar with Mr. Dulos? Had you spoken to him sometime in 2019?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury whether you saw Mr. Dulos on May 24th of 2019?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury how or where, what context you saw Mr. Dulos on that date.
I was driving home. It was between 6 p.m. and 6:30. And I saw Fotis jogging in front of my house as I came in with the car.
You saw Fotis jogging on Jefferson Crossing?
Yes, I did.
Had you ever seen Mr. Dulos run before?
I do not recall seeing him run before as a jogger.
Okay. Do you recall whether you spoke to the police about seeing Fotis Dulos on May 24th, 2019?
Yes, I did.
And did you give a statement to the police?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell the police about what you observed about Mr. Dulos' appearance on May 24th, 2019 while he was running?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the jury?
I noticed that he looked haggard. His face seemed to be in distress. It was very unusual to me, and he seemed to almost be shuffling. So it struck me as unusual, and I actually told my wife and my daughter about it afterwards, that I had seen Fotis running, and he looked haggard and old and unusual.
But you were sure that was Mr. Dulos?
Yes.
Was he by himself?
Yes, he was.
All right, I have no further questions. Thank you.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. French, you may step down.
please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Michael Rose, R-O-S-E.
Thank you.
Attorney Rose, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please tell the members of the jury, first of all, where are you from? What town do you live in?
I live in East Hampton and I work in Hartford, Connecticut.
Could you tell the members of the jury what you do for a living?
I am an attorney at a law firm in Hartford called Rose Kaler,
How long have you been an attorney at law?
approximately 30 years.
Could you describe for the jury the nature of your practice?
Certainly, our practice, my practice primarily is litigation, employment litigation, civil rights defense, and a host of other things emanating from federal civil rights statutes.
When you say civil rights defense, who or what entity or persons are you usually representing?
I very often represent police departments, fire departments, elected officials. Our firm represents a portion of the state of Connecticut as well.
Are there occasions when you branch outside of your main area of expertise?
There are.
Let me turn now to the year 2019. Did you happen to get involved in, as a lawyer representing someone in a family court matter?
I did.
Was that something you did a lot back then?
No, as a matter of fact, it was the first time I'd ever been asked to get involved in a divorce case.
And who was your client in that case?
In that case, it was Fotis Dulos.
Could you indicate, if you recall, the time frame that you represented Mr. Dulos?
I represented him from approximately sometime in early January, mid-January, until sometime in very early June of 2019.
What was the matter that you were representing?
I came in on a limited appearance initially, which you can do in a divorce case. It was to assist him with custody concerns that he was having. And after a certain point in that case, everything became sort of entwined, and I entered a general appearance.
And when you say a general appearance, you said a limited. Could you just tell the jury the difference between a limited and general appearance?
Certainly. So divorce is one of the areas of law where the judicial system allows you to enter a limited appearance. And I think the court sometimes views it as a lawyer helping through certain parts of a divorce. So in this case, my limited appearance was, I believe, just custody matters at the time. There was a dispute over custody. Eventually, you can also file a full appearance, at which point the attorney is responsible for all phases of the defense or the plaintiff's case on the other hand as well. So it's a split proceeding at the beginning, and then if the lawyer and the client choose to broaden that role, then they can.
And without getting into any specifics of what was occurring in the court, could you just tell us procedurally what kind of matters were you representing, or what procedures were you representing Mr. Dulos in during that time frame?
Certainly. As I said, it was, broadly speaking, it was custody. So there was a general concerns about how the custody arrangements were, and I was brought in to essentially help him in the custody matters themselves.
Do you recall what the status was at the time that you entered your appearance?
Oh, certainly. At the time I entered an appearance, the status was that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to get into this.
Well, I don't want you to get anything that happened in court. We're talking in general, the status
Okay.
of where things were at that time.
Certainly. The status was that
Objection, could I
Mr.
just, I'm sorry, but if I could just get a time frame?
We're talking since January of 2019 through, right?
Yes.
Till May of 2000, or,
We haven't gotten to May yet, right? We're still in January, February.
okay, I just wanted to clarify the time frame. Thank you.
In January, the status was that Mr. Dulos was not allowed to see his children at all.
And during the course of your representation, without getting any specifics, did that change? Yes.
It did. That status changed to sometime in March to where there were structured visitation, was structured
And
visitation.
after that, were you anticipating some further proceedings with regard to the representation and the disposition, if you will?
Certainly. These proceedings were temporary in nature during the initial period of separation. And what happens generally is that the court will look for a permanent resolution once the divorce is finalized. So what we were doing is working on the temporary orders, and then there was an eye towards what would happen when the divorce became finalized, and also in the middle of that process, if we could change it from supervised visitation to something else.
During this time of representation, did you also, on occasion, speak with Michelle Troconis?
I did.
You did not represent Michelle Troconis, correct?
I did not.
Did you speak to her, however, in relation to the divorce proceeding and the custody proceedings with Veronica?
I did.
And I'm going to ask for a little leeway here because I don't want to get into any actual communications you had with Mr. Dulos. You understand that,
I do.
right?
I do.
Were there times when you reached out to have discussions with Mr. Dulos where you were not able to do so because my client was present?
Indeed, yes.
And was that in fact conveyed to you on occasion so that it would require you to wait until another time to speak with Mr. Dulos?
It did.
And I'm going to ask that this be marked for identification. And I'm just going to note that the printer was running out of ink, so it's not as clear as I would like, but is yours better?
Mine's better, do you want mine?
Yeah. Your Honor, the copy I gave to counsel is better than the one, so thank you. Any objection?
Yes.
Let me just show this. May I approach?
Yes.
Showing what has been marked as Exhibit U for identification, did you receive a general communication not regarding Ms. Troconis' presence, regarding whether you could communicate with him at that time, that is, with Mr. Dulos?
Yes.
And does that document contain the warning or the comment about why you got to wait?
It does.
I would offer it.
Your Honor, it's clearly a hearsay statement by Mr. Dulos. There's no exception that is that this falls under. The state would object.
Counsel.
It's being offered to show that as a result of that, he could not speak to his client at that time. It's not being offered for the truth of the fact that he's unavailable because of my client's presence. It's being offered to show that as a result of that, the witness had to wait till another moment to speak to Attorney Dulos, to Mr. Dulos.
If I may, Your Honor, I don't know why the fact that on May 8th or 6th, I'm not sure if that's an 8 or the 6th on this copy, whether the attorney could speak to him that day is relevant to this proceeding. So if it's not offered for the truth of the matter, then it's certainly not relevant for today's purposes.
It goes to whether my client was privy to the communications from them.
Well, the testimony, as the court understands it so far, is that Attorney Rose could not speak to Mr. Dulos in the presence of Michelle Troconis. That's how the court understood the testimony.
Yes.
And so this document essentially is a hearsay document in which Fotis Dulos is indicating that he could not speak to his lawyer with Michelle Troconis. Is that what this document is?
It is a statement that he does not want to speak in front of Ms. Troconis, that Mr. Dulos does not want to speak in front of Ms. Troconis.
And what's the relevance of the offer?
Well, it's to show that that certain matters pertaining to divorce were being kept from my client.
Well, of course, now the court knows what the document says. Well, and counsel cannot ask Attorney Rose, what did Fotis Dulos say about having Michelle Troconis there?
Right.
It is a hearsay document. Does it fall into any exception?
It would
Because the
fall-
court finds that it's being offered for the truth.
Well, let me just say this. As a result of that comment by Mr. Dulos, did you then have to postpone discussing the matter with Mr. Dulos?
Certainly,
So it had an effect on your conduct, is that right?
certainly.
Again, Your Honor, I don't understand why Attorney Rose's conduct or effect on his mind on May 6th of 2019 is in any way relevant.
Well, again, the court's understanding of the offer is that as of that date, Fotis Dulos could not be in the presence of Michelle Troconis discussing his case with Attorney Rose.
While discussing the case, yes, that's the purpose.
If I can, Your Honor, this is why the state would argue that this is not relevant and a hearsay exception, because
Well, it is a
there's-
hearsay statement.
It is a hearsay statement, Your Honor, and counsel is making a intentional offer and putting intention behind words in a text message that is not there. And there is no way for the state to cross on Fotis Dulos' intention that counsel is indicating based on 5 or 6 words in a text message.
Well, the court has already found that it's being offered for the truth, it's hearsay. If the objection is hearsay, it's sustained.
Prior to May 6, 2019, I'll take the exhibit back. In general, whether you look at this or not, were there times when you were unable to talk to Mr. Dulos about his case because Ms. Troconis was present?
Object, Your Honor.
Grounds,
Relevance calls for hearsay.
overruled.
Certainly, there were.
And in certain time frame, did there, and again, we're not going to get into its content, but you're aware, you were awaiting the presentation or production of a custody report, is that correct?
Objection.
Well, the issue now is whether or not, or the question is whether this witness was waiting for the arrival to his office, as the court understands it, of a custody report that had already been completed. That's how the court understands the question. And the objection is?
The objection is relevance, Your Honor, and as well as mischaracterization. It's my understanding that he didn't get a copy, or, well, I will withdraw that, actually.
So the way I would answer is, I did not get a copy of the report as I don't know if it's been addressed, but we went down to review the report at Attorney Michael Meehan's office. And I don't have a recollection when that was. I think that was sometime in,
If I show you a document, might it refresh your recollection to when you reviewed that document?
that would certainly help, thanks.
I'll mark this for, you. May I approach?
Yes.
Sir, showing you exhibit VV for identification, does that refresh your recollection as to when you went and reviewed the report?
It does in a general timeline. I can't recall that specific date, but it's the timeline I thought it was.
And is this a document that was presented in court?
This document, yes.
And does it contain the information about when you went to the office to review the report?
To Attorney Meehan's office? Yes, it does.
I would offer it, Your Honor.
Relevance, Your Honor? I
Well-
would object.
The document had been intended to refresh this witness's recollection. By showing the witness the document, his recollection was not refreshed. And the witness indicated that it was around, on that timeline. The question or the objection is relevance. So what is relevant about when this witness reviewed the report?
Well, it's not just that, it's the witness, well, I'll ask the follow-up. Was Mr. Dulos with you when you reviewed it?
Indeed, he was, yes.
On that same day, at the same time?
Yes,
At Attorney Meehan's office?
yes.
I would ask that it be admitted, Your Honor, it's a court document that just records the date, and it's relevant to show from what date forward, how information flowed from that.
Is there an objection?
Your Honor,
The court does not know what document it is.
Could I approach, Your
Yes.
Honor? This is not a sealed document.
Well, according to this document, it's not clear what was reviewed on what date.
Well, the witness testified that he couldn't recall the specific date, but this documented that particular event in that report.
Well, based on the court's reading of the document, it would be confusing. So this document doesn't explain in terms that are not confusing that Attorney Rose reviewed a report on X date. So the court is going to sustain the objection.
All right, I'm going to lay a further foundation here. Was there any other reason, do you remember what month you went to Attorney Meehan's office?
I do after reviewing that.
Oh, after
I
reviewing
do.
it?
Yeah, I just
Right.
couldn't
When
recall
was
the
that?
specific date. It was in April, late April.
And was there any other reason in April 2019 that you would have gone with your client to Attorney Meehan's office besides looking at the custody report?
No, that's, Attorney Meehan called us, told us the custody report was ready for us to review, asked us to come down. I drove down with the Attorney Dulos, and we reviewed it. I just couldn't recall if it was in March or late April, and now I see it's late April.
And does this document, do you recall this document being filed in court?
I do.
And if it, at the time that it was filed in court, would you have remembered or recalled whether the date was accurate that was indicated in that log?
I cannot tell you if the specific date that is recorded there is the right. Some of these dates do stick with me, but that particular one does not.
Well,
But
no, my question is, at the time it was filed, did you have any objection claiming
No.
that it was inaccurate?
no, no,
So as far as you knew, it was filed, it was recorded accurate.
yes.
Again, I would offer it, Your Honor.
may I have a moment and just take a look at it?
Have an extra copy.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Thank you. No objection, Your Honor, we can move on.
What is the designation, please?
VV.
VV defense admitted as full.
I'm just going to put it up on the screen for a moment. It's not on yet, so.
Okay. Where should I look? Should I look here?
Either there, whichever is easier for you. Oh, I think it's coming into view. So showing what has been marked as Exhibit VV. You recall seeing this document, correct?
I do.
Could you just please read the line below the words "date copy made"?
All right.
You want me to zoom in? I'll
Yeah,
zoom
we're
in for
just, it's hard to pick that up.
you. Sure. If you look behind you, it might even be easier.
Let's do
for
that,
you.
okay. Date copy made April 24th, 2019.
And then just, what does it say?
It indicates that Raisa Garcia, secretary for Attorney Meehan, made a copy for us to review.
Could you just read the next sentence? Just read it out loud for the
Sure.
record.
Both reviewed in the presence of Attorney Meehan and returned to Attorney Meehan without any duplication, dissemination, notes, or recording in any way by either.
All right, thank you. And is that what happened?
It is. We were given copies, and we're not allowed to bring in, to the best of my recollection, not allowed to bring in iPhones. We're not allowed to make any photostatic copies of the document. We were allowed to review it and take notes of key salient points.
And without discussing at all what you two discussed about it, were you able, with Mr. Dulos, to discuss it?
We were.
Do you recall how long you were at Attorney Meehan's office reviewing that document?
It was a number of years ago, approximately 5, but something in the area of maybe hour and a half. Sounds right.
And was Mr. Dulos present while you were going through the document?
He was.
Did you see him reading it with you?
Yes, I did.
Without getting into any words that were used, could you describe Mr. Dulos's demeanor after he was at that office with you?
Certainly. He was very happy with what was there. Pleased. You could tell that he just seemed relieved and more optimistic than I'd seen him in a while.
And again, with limitation, without specifying what it was called, did you file anything in court subsequent to your reviewing this report?
We did. We filed, and I won't give the name of it, but we filed a motion after we reviewed this particular document with the court.
And that would be in the family court?
It was, yes.
I asked you before whether you had ever spoken with Mr. Troconis. Was that in person or on the phone?
A number of times.
Were you ever at their house at 4 Jefferson Crossing?
A number of times.
Did you ever discuss anything about the divorce with Mr. Troconis?
I did.
Would this have been in what time frame?
I would say throughout January, all the way through the 24th of May. I did not speak to her after the 24th, but throughout that whole time, I would see her, whether we'd be working up in Mr. Dulos' office, I might see her. Our children were together on a ski team, and that's actually how I got to meet her. And so we'd talk a little bit about it at whether it was ski races or ski practice. So it was something that we discussed. You know, granted, I didn't discuss privilege matters, but it was things that I would discuss with her about things that I could felt would be of help to her.
Do you recall being either at Mr. Dulos' house or being in the presence of Mr. Troconis around Greek Easter of 2019?
I do.
Do you recall approximately when that was?
That was also, I believe, late April. I actually went back and checked this recently. I think it was the 28th of April in 2019, and traditional Easter was the 21st.
Was the Greek Easter that you saw Mr. Troconis, was that following the time you were at Attorney Meehan's office?
It was. Excuse me.
Could you tell us what the conversation, did you make any, did you have any communications with Mr. Troconis on that occasion?
I did. I had a number of communications with her, around that time period, just in general, pleasantries, seeing her, exchanging kids or things like that. But yes, I did talk to her. I'm not specifically sure what you're asking about. So.
Well, I'm going to ask whether she expressed to you on that occasion any future intention or plans.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay.
Well, it hasn't been asked yet.
Okay, so may I answer that
Yes.
question? I don't believe she made any expression about any future plans other than children, things like that.
My question had to do with her intentions of doing anything in the future.
No.
No. Did you have any conversations subsequent with Mr. Troconis during the month of May of 2019?
I did.
At that time, did Mr. Troconis express to you any view of her future plans?
Objection.
So at that time, did Mr. Troconis express to you any view of her future plans?
Not view, I thought any expression of her future plans.
Well, that's either a yes or a no, or the witness does not remember.
I don't recall anything. There was nothing that would stand out that was significant.
How would you describe Mr. Troconis's demeanor when you spoke to her in May of 2019?
Generally very happy. Generally very happy.
Did you ask anything of her during the month of May of 2019?
Well, I could certainly say as a matter of custom, I would ask her how she's doing, how was holding up during this process, which obviously had other impacts other than on my client. So there would be questions like that. And again, we'd talk about children as well. But I would occasionally talk to her about the case and see how she was doing.
And in May, when you say the case you were representing Mr. Dulos.
Certainly, yes.
Did you make any requests of her regarding the pace of the case?
Did I make any requests of her
Yes.
regarding the pace? I do not think so, no. No, I don't think so.
Did you say anything about a prediction to her about how long things were going to take?
I did on that different question. So I recall telling Michelle that there was light at the end of the tunnel. And I asked her, and I told her just, it's a long process. It's complicated, it's tough, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And we had reason to be optimistic going forward that matters would return to some sense of normalcy. So I recall speaking.
And how did she have a reaction to that statement?
She seemed relieved. She seemed relieved, and it appeared to me that she wanted to hear that and hear more about that.
So on a totally different topic, unrelated to the case, did you ever have any text messages with Mr. Dulos about his haircut?
I did.
And how did that come about? What prompted those text messages?
Certainly. At some point in, I believe it was mid-May, we had a hearing here at Stanford Superior Court on the motion that I'd spoken about earlier. And at that point, I noticed that Fotis had his haircut. It was shaved very, very short. And so I commented to him in a text about that.
So, you're aware that those text messages were provided from Mr. Dulos's phone during the investigation regarding the hair?
I was very surprised to find that my messages to my client were.
Okay. In any event, his haircut had nothing to do with legal advice, did it?
Objection. Cause for him to speculate as to what Fotis Dulos' intentions. If not that, then he's asking for hearsay statements.
Well, it's-
Well, at this point, the question is, his haircut did not have anything to do with legal proceedings.
And he said no. So,
Well, then, there's going to be a follow-up to that. And so, if the question is simply what has been asked, the court will overrule the objection.
so could you just repeat your answer? Did it have anything to do with legal?
No, our discussions back and forth didn't have to deal with anything legally.
What, I'm sorry?
Anything legally, it was my,
It was like just a personal commentary.
correct.
Had you had seen him with his hair cut short?
I had, and I'm trying to think if it was in court or on a Facebook post. I remember I saw it in, it's about mid-May, and it was right around the time, there's this, Judge Heller had set a series of hearings going, 2 or 3 times a day, 2 or 3 times a week, forgive me. So we were coming down a lot. So I saw it sometime in the mid-May. I can't tell you if the first time I saw it on Facebook or if I saw it on him.
All right. I'm going to offer WW as an exhibit.
Your Honor, this is the same manner of the exhibit counsel attempted to introduce, which was, I'm sorry, I don't know what number that was, for the text messages. And again, we're at the same point where it's a statement by somebody that, for the truth of the matter, it's from Fotis Dulos. It is not admissible. It is hearsay statement. If it is not hearsay, there is no relevance to that at this point, and the state would be objecting to it being admitted.
Well, with regard to the claim of hearsay, there's no basis for that. It's clearly not being offered for the truth of whether this witness liked or didn't like Mr. Dulos's haircut. It has to do with the time frame, because Your Honor will recall there was a certain other witness claimed, we submit, that we're contradicting that evidence, that it had happened on May 24th, that one of the prior state's witness had claimed that, and this would dispute that and would clearly show that that testimony, at least the jury could determine that that prior testimony was untrue. So it is being offered not as direct impeachment, it's actual evidence that would contradict testimony that came out during the state's case.
Now, if I can be heard, obviously the jury can make the call on the evidence that they've heard either way. What I would like to know is what evidence counsel is referring to, because in the state's view, we have not introduced any evidence that the haircut occurred on May 24th. I'd like to know who, and direct me, please, to that testimony. There has been testimony of the haircut, from my recollection, put in primarily by the defense, and that specifically on the state's view, any reference to it was not with direct to one specific day that that haircut occurred on May 24th. That I have not heard of. The idea that we are introducing text messages to do the time frame of a haircut in order, in the state's view, just to backdoor a Fotis Dulos' statements about his own intention so that the state cannot cross-examine, is the epitome of why the hearsay exception is there. And that is why the state is asking for it to be precluded.
Well,
Counsel was probably forgotten. Mr. Gumieni said that under oath in his direct examination. So if she doesn't recall that, I just want Your Honor to recall.
well, the court's recollection is not that Mr. Gumieni said that on the 24th, Fotis Dulos had a haircut. In other words, his hair was cut on the 24th. That was not the testimony.
To the
He
contrary.
may have noticed that the hair was short on the 24th, but there's no evidence that Fotis Dulos' hair was cut by Michelle Troconis on the 24th of May.
But since Mr. Gumiani had been with Mr. Dulos on the 23rd, but claimed that he hadn't even seen it until the 24th, is, I submit, directly contradicted by what this witness and his text back and forth can show. And it's-
Well, the simple question is, did this witness discuss the haircut with Fotis Dulos before May 24th?
But it was a full, at least a week, more than a week before, which is what's crucial.
Well, you can ask the witness, counsel. Did you discuss this up to a week before the 24th of May? Did you discuss the haircut up to a week before?
I guess my question is the court indicating that actually that the physical evidence through these messages that demonstrate the time frame is not admissible? It's only, I mean, I could ask the witness the questions, but I'm not able to substantiate that with the text messages. I just
Well,
want to.
it's hearsay. And the court sees that it would be offered for the truth of the matter asserted. And so it's inadmissible. But you can ask the witness, did you have that conversation?
Did you have the text conversation about it?
I did.
Remember what day that was?
On or about May 16th of 2019.
And what did you say about his haircut?
I told him essentially that it wasn't terribly attractive, and we had sort of that relationship, and we were going through a tense time. I wanted to lighten it, lighten him up, tease him a little bit, and told him that I noticed it, and for one of the first times, he didn't. His appearance wasn't all buttoned up the way it normally was.
Did he respond to you about your comment that you didn't like his haircut?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
It's not being offered for the truth, it's the fact of his.
Well, the question would then be, did he respond? The answer is yes, and that's as far as it would go.
And the answer is yes, I do believe we had a back and forth on or about May 16th about his haircut.
Let me ask you a different question. Are you a water skier?
I am not.
Have you ever gone water skiing?
I have.
Have you ever observed Mr. Dulos water skiing?
I have.
Have you ever watched him?
Actually, let me strike that. I have not. I've seen video of him and I've seen photos of him. I've not been at the pond.
And you never went and watched him either compete
No, I did not.
or do flips or any other water skiing maneuvers?
No.
Did you know that just through your knowledge of him, that he did compete nationally and maybe internationally?
I do.
As,
I did.
As a water skier?
I did.
And just have a moment.
Yes.
I have no further question.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
And just want to get to the beginning of my question. Just a couple questions for you, okay?
Yes.
Okay. How long have you been a lawyer?
Since 1994.
94. And I think you testified on direct, you primarily do civil rights defense?
Yes.
Okay. And is your law firm up in Hartford?
Yes.
Did you take any cases beyond the Fotis Dulos case down here in Stanford?
I actually, if your question is in the divorce realm, no. In the general civil realm, yes, we have a statewide practice.
Okay. And you began with a limited appearance?
Yes, I did.
And you were actually friends with Fotis?
It's a little bit different. We became friends through that process, but I knew him. He actually was the coach of the U10s up at the ski club in, it's called Ski Sundown. So he was the coach. I got to know him through there, and then also our children became friends.
Okay. And you were invited to Greek Easter?
I was.
Okay. And you socialized with him and Michelle Troconis?
I would say very rarely social. You know what I mean? I did go to that Greek Easter, but out to dinner, no. We really didn't do anything like that. We were busy with work because, again, this was about a 5-6 month relationship. So I wouldn't say I socialized other than the Easter, or if I was there working with Fotis, we might come down to the kitchen and they would be preparing a meal and we'd talk.
Okay. And when you would talk to Michelle Troconis, was that in English?
It was, yes.
Okay. You started in, I think you said, a 5 to 6 month of relationship, so this was time phrase right, January 2019?
As far as the legal relationship?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. And I think you testified on direct that in January, he wasn't allowed to see the kids at all?
that's my recollection.
Okay. And in March, he was able to get, you use the term structured visitation.
Yes,
Does that also include supervised
it
visitation?
was. It was a supervised visitation with the two guardians.
Okay, and so he went from absolutely no contact whatsoever with the children to he can have contact, but it has to be a supervisor present, is that right?
It was, yes.
Okay, and that was in March of 2019?
Yes.
Okay. And between March of 2019 and May of 2019, did you or Fotis, I guess, make motions to try and change that?
We did.
Okay, would you say many motions?
You know, Attorney Manning, I can recall one large one, which you probably are aware of, and I just cannot recall because my limited appearance changed at some point.
Okay.
And I don't, and so what I did some things. Mr. Dulos did some things on his own, and I can't tell you if there were a lot of motions, but I can tell you he was trying to somewhat change that visitation structure with the two guardians, and I just can't tell you if there were a lot of motions on that.
Okay, and that visitation structure, he attempted to change that, you would say in March, in April, and in May of 2019?
I can't honestly answer other than to say I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because it was a somewhat awkward structure with two guardians there.
Okay. And in April of 2019 is when we have this report?
Yes.
Okay, and I think according to the defense's paper that they submitted, did you get a copy of the report?
I did not get a copy of the report at that meeting. I'm fairly sure we did not get a copy of that. We eventually did get a copy later on.
Okay. And did you give that copy to Fotis Dulos?
I did not. My recollection is the court order was that was for attorneys. Well, hang on, let me be careful about that. There was eventually an order that it could not be shared with clients. I just can't recall if before that order from Judge Heller, if he was allowed to be given a copy. He certainly would have had access to the contents of it when we were doing our motion practice.
But you can't recall if you handed him a copy of his own?
I can't, there's something that's telling me that Judge Heller didn't want us to do that, so I would try to follow the judge's orders, and I just can't recall, because as you know, then there was some concern later on about that.
Okay. And his attitude, I think you described on direct as happy, optimistic?
Yes,
Okay. And during that time in late April, he also still had those supervisors in effect?
he did.
Okay. So whatever motions, many, small, that occurred in March, April, and May were not successful. That supervisor was still in effect, correct?
That was, yes, I can answer
Okay.
that. That supervised structure stayed all the way through.
Okay. And he was happy with, after reviewing that report with you at Meehan's office?
Yes,
Okay, and then you filed a motion? right?
yes,
Okay. And was that motion heard?
it was.
Okay. After that motion was heard, at the end of the day, did he still have the structured supervised visitation in place?
He did at that time. It was, I think after that motion was heard, the judge asked us to come back, and so it stayed in effect.
Yes. So after the motion was heard, still nothing had changed?
As physically, as far as that structured visit, no.
Now, a couple other questions generally. I think counsel asked you a little bit about Ms. Troconis' demeanor, how she was generally happy as well. But you had conversations with her about the case, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And I think you indicated on direct, you said you told her that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, was the
Yes.
phrase you used? Do you recall saying that?
I do.
Because things were, it was hard on her, would you say?
Well, To answer that honestly, the only way I would know that is through communications with Mr. Dulos, so I don't think I can really answer it that way. I don't think that she really expressed to me that it was hard on her, but as a human being, you can see somebody and know, they're a little bit uncomfortable with what's going on.
Okay, and that's why you told her there was a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, I think she had asked me, or maybe somebody else had asked me to talk to her and just sort of tell her where we think it's going. And I just want to be clear, we didn't talk about the substance.
Okay.
Because there was, and I want to get my recollection correct, I believe Judge Heller certainly did not want us to talk about the specific motion. So my comments were more general in nature, if that's helpful.
And this conversation was before that hearing was heard?
I know we talked on the Greek Easter. I just can't tell if we spoke after that. I really can't.
Well, let me ask you this, did you speak to her on May 24th of 2019?
I did not, no.
Did you speak to her on May 23rd?
I did not.
And just a couple more days on that week, the 22nd?
Well, I did see her, and I just don't know if it was, I think it might have been the Saturday before I saw her.
Okay, so that would be like the 19th?
Yeah, around the
Okay,
19th.
but you had a court hearing after
Well, I'm
that?
going to object. I don't think the 19th would have been a week.
Well, that was the estimate of the witness or counsel. And
I can
what-
rephrase, Your Honor, and direct it a little bit more. It was definitely a little vague. Sir, did you talk to Michelle Troconis about a light of the tunnel and about the case prior to the visitation still being in effect on May 22nd, 2019?
Can you rephrase that? I'm so sorry, I'm not really
Sure.
following it.
That conversation you had with her, okay, was that before, well, I'll rephrase it. You're aware Jennifer Dulos was missing on May 24th?
I was.
Okay. And there was a court hearing that week, correct?
Objection. I don't believe that's accurate.
Well, that's not an objection.
It misstates the evidence.
Well, the witness can answer the way in which the witness chooses to answer.
And I was going to say, actually, I think it was maybe the week before there were hearings.
Okay.
I don't think we had any activity that week, and that's why I recall seeing Michelle, I think, on the Friday or Saturday before that. Maybe it was like the 19th or 20th.
Okay. And there was, based on that hearing, there was an order that came out on around that time period, we'll say. Days don't,
Your
around
Honor,
that time
I'm going to
period.
object. We're now getting into the specifics of hearings that I thought the court precluded any testimony about, and I avoided that, and now we're getting into it.
Well, the court is careful not to,
Your Honor, maybe approach.
well, the court is careful not to come close to certain matters. But the court understands the question, essentially, this is the question that the court understands. The question that is coming. What was her demeanor on such and such a date? About a week before the 24th of May. That's how the
Your
court
Honor, we
understands
went for
what's.
a different matter, just a very brief on the off the record.
Afternoon recess until 3:30. Please do not discuss the case.
All right.
I think
I
I
don't-
see.
This honorable Supreme Court now
I don't
is
care.
executive session. But I'm
Yeah,
gonna-
I don't care.
Good afternoon. Please be seated. Thank you.
Judge, does the court object if either I or the court just explains that there was the witness needed to, her transportation didn't arrive, and that's why it was an urgent thing, so they don't assume it's something related to the case?
It was about time for the recess in any event, so the court doesn't see the need for that. We can bring the jury in, please. Okay, will counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if I can just continue,
Yeah.
move on if I. Attorney Rose, just a couple more questions, okay?
Certainly.
Okay. In one of these conversations with Michelle Troconis about the light at the end of the tunnel, did the defendant ever talk to you about the fact that she believed Jennifer Dulos was manipulating Fotis Dulos?
I do not recall, that, no.
Okay. What about manipulating the court system?
There were probably comments about the court system. I can't recall a specific one, but I think that's normal for litigants not to be thrilled after 2 years.
And did she ever talk to you about her considering moving out of state?
I don't recall that, no.
Or that she had a flight to out of state in June of 2017 scheduled?
Not to me, Attorney Manning.
And did she ever refer to Fotis Dulos and Jennifer Farber Dulos as toxic people?
No, no.
Okay, I have nothing further, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a few questions. You had mentioned, again, Greek Easter. What was you were invited to the Dulos home on Fort Jefferson Crossing?
I was.
How many people were there?
Maybe 20, somewhere in that 15 to 20.
Do you know who any of those people were?
Well, I know Michelle's family was there, and so I was able to meet her dad and mom. And I think there were some other family friends. I'm getting a little bit confused because there were some times where there were ski family friends that would go over. So on that one, I just generally remember the Troconis family there.
Was that a celebration? How was the atmosphere during that event?
The atmosphere was quite nice. It was pleasant. We were taught about some Greek culture things. There was Greek dancing. There was I don't know if there was just music or a band. I can't recall. And there was eventually, some plates. I think there's something traditional they do in the culture where some plates were broken, which, I come from a conservative background, so that shook me a little bit. But it was very festive, very happy.
Was there food?
It was fantastic food.
Now, you were asked questions by Ms. Manning about whether or not you communicated with Ms. Troconis in English. In your presence, did you hear her speaking other languages?
I did.
And what language or languages did you hear her speak?
I don't know, but there would be different times when she would need to convert Fahrenheit to Celsius, and she would go into a different language and talk to Fotis in a different language. And I don't know if it was Greek or Spanish or something else.
Did she ever use Spanish words in the middle of her conversing with you in English?
I can't say it was specifically with me, but I was around her for races and things like that. We had other family friends that were friendly, so.
And she spoke in a different language to them?
Yes. Oh, not to my family or friends, but just around a group of people. I've heard her speak Spanish.
And you mentioned that you had been with Michelle and Fotis the weekend before the disappearance. Do you remember those questions?
I do.
Where did you go?
So what we did, I think it was the Saturday after some hearings. I'm guessing that it was the 19th or 20th, around there. And the kids from the ski team were getting together. And there was a sort of a group of children who all raced together. So Nicole was there, one of my children was there, and then a group of other kids. They were all getting together in West Hartford with a cousin of mine who also had a daughter, and all the kids, it was sort of their big night out at the time. They were like 11 or 12 years old, and they were going into West Hartford Center to do dinner and I think a panic room or something like that. I don't know what it is, but.
Did that include Michelle's daughter?
Yes.
Could you describe the demeanor of Mr. Troconis on that evening? This would be after those hearings and before the disappearance. Would you describe her demeanor that
Sure.
evening?
I saw her, and I saw Fotis, and there may have been another couple, and it was just a very brief exchange, but she was, as I always saw her, happy, smiling, with warm greetings, and, life seemed to be good at that point.
No further questions.
Just briefly, sir, with respect to Greek Easter, were Fotis Dulos' children present?
No, they were not.
And in fact, there was an order in court saying that if Michelle Troconis was there.
Objection.
Well, this is running far afield of the,
I'll withdraw it,
Leave it
Your
read.
Honor. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Manning.
Attorney Rose, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give regarding this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury? Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Rainier-Mendes, R-A-N-I-A-M-E-N-O-U-T-S.
You may be seated.
Good afternoon, Ms. Menounos.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to ask you to speak up or maybe use the microphone a bit because you speak a little softly in this big room, okay? Could you please indicate to the members of the jury, what town do you live in?
Canton.
Could you tell us what you do for a living?
I'm a real estate agent.
Where do you practice as a real estate agent?
I'm licensed for the entire state, but primarily the Farmington Valley towns.
What kind of real estate do you either market or sell or buy as an agent?
Residential.
How long have you been doing that?
Since 2018.
Can you tell me whether or not in 2019 you had any prospective buyers looking to build a home in the Farmington Avon area, in the Farmington Valley area?
Yes.
Could you just tell us what the interests of those individuals are? What were they seeking?
Any specific buyers
Well, let
or?
me talk about specifically May 2019. Did you have any prospective buyers who wanted to build a home?
Yes, I did.
And what were they seeking, if you recall?
A home up to 1.1 million.
Did you reach out to any builders to discuss the kind of construction that could be had for that family or those individuals for in that price range?
Yes.
And again, could you speak up a little? I can't really.
Yes.
Can you tell us who you reached out to?
Fotis Dulos.
Did you know Fotis Dulos to be a builder of higher-end homes in the area?
Yes.
How what did you do? What did you plan with Mr. Dulos?
I plan to bring the prospective clients to meet with him so he could show them some plans of a home that, you know, he could build to their liking.
Was there any discussion with Mr. Dulos about having those clients of yours look at any of his other properties?
Yes.
Calling your attention specifically to the week of between May 17th and May 25, 2019, that 8-day period, did you specifically make arrangements with regard to a meeting with Mr. Dulos during that time?
Yes.
And just tell us how that came about.
So I reached out to him via phone calls or texts, I don't recall which one, probably both, and set up an appointment.
What did you tell him you wanted to do?
Talk to him, bring my clients to either show them one of his homes that he had already built so they could take a look at the quality of his work, and also look at some plans if he could scale down to fit their budget.
Was there a particular property that you had in mind that you wanted to show your clients in terms of the quality of the work?
I did not. I was open to whatever he wanted to show them.
Did you make arrangements with Mr. Dulos to show a particular property?
Yes,
And what was that address?
80 Mountain Spring Road.
And what did you know about 80 Mountain Spring Road in Farmington at that time?
I believe it was for sale at the time. It was clearly larger and out of budget for my clients, but it was a good representation of his work.
Did you plan a particular time to meet with Mr. Dulos?
Yes,
Do you recall what day that was
Saturday, May 25th.
of 2019?
Correct.
Did you in fact accompany your clients to a meeting with Mr. Dulos on the morning of May 25th, 2019?
Yes, we met there
When you say there, where did you meet?
at Ford Jefferson Crossing
Where in that address?
in the office.
And were you there with your customers, your clients?
Yes, I met them there.
Who else was Mr. Dulos present?
Yes,
Was anyone else present at that time?
yes.
Who else was there?
Michelle Troconis.
Did you talk to her on that occasion?
I probably said hello.
Did you observe what she was doing on that occasion?
She was on a laptop.
On her laptop?
Yes,
Doing something on her computer?
yes.
During the meeting with Mr. Dulos, how long did that last?
About 30 minutes.
And at some point, would it have been customary when you showed clients houses with a builder, would you have the builder accompany the individuals with you to the property?
It depends on the situation. Most often, yes.
Did Mr. Dulos accompany you to the address to 80 Mountain Spring Road on that Saturday, May 25th?
No, he did not.
Did he indicate why he couldn't?
He said he had a meeting he had to get to.
Now, during the meeting with Mr. Dulos, what did you talk about?
Strictly the house plans. He brought out several plans. He did most of the talking, and he asked a lot of questions from the prospective clients about what they were looking for, and it was really that kind of conversation.
Was it all business-related
Yes,
communications?
yes.
Did he ever say anything that seemed out of place for that conversation?
No,
At some point, did he have to depart?
he did.
And you indicated he said he had another meeting he had to go to?
Correct.
So how did you get into the property at 80 Mountain Spring?
He gave me the code of the garage.
Did you go with the clients to 80 Mountain Spring?
Yes.
This was about what time on May 25th?
Probably 9:45.
AM?
Yes.
When you went inside, just describe how it appeared to you inside.
Like an empty home that was unoccupied.
Was it in a condition for a showing?
Yes,
Was there any trash around?
no,
Any garbage bags around?
nothing that we saw.
Anything out of place?
No, there was nothing there.
Did you go through the entire house?
I wouldn't say the entire house. We went through the main floor, went upstairs, probably looked at one or two of the bedrooms just for them to get an idea, again, of the quality of his work.
Did the codes, were the codes to get in, you said it was a keypad code?
Correct.
Where was that located?
On the garage door.
Did you go in through the garage?
Yes,
How long would you say you were at the meeting with Mr. Dulos, at his office?
no more than 30 minutes.
And then when you went to 80 Mountain Spring Road, how long were you inside the structure once you punched in the code?
Probably no more than 10 minutes.
And I asked you about specific things. Was there anything that appeared out of place to you?
No,
You indicated that there were some communications with Mr. Dulos just to set up the appointment.
correct.
I'm going to mark this for identification. May I approach?
Well, yes.
Showing you what has been marked as Exhibit XX for identification. If I just have a moment.
Oh, it is already.
Well, not this.
Yeah.
Not in this format. Oh, no objection, Your Honor. This is already entered in a different exhibit,
Thank you.
in a different format, I should say.
So XX admitted as full.
Does this, then, I'm going to ask, does this contain the communications with Mr. Dulos about setting up the appointment for having your clients meet with him?
Yes,
And what were the dates of the text messages?
5/24. They were all on 5/24.
And that, the meeting was to take place when?
5/25.
I'll just briefly show it to the jury. I realize it was in as part of the state's exhibit, but.
It's kind of hard to see. That should be fun. It just takes a second. It's so hard to see. It's not.
Okay. And again, just so if you look in the screen in front of you or behind you, these are the, I'll wait till it focuses in, Exhibit XX. This is the string of text messages about it between you and Mr. Dulos.
Yes, it's a little blurry, but yes,
And you indicated that down at the bottom, that your clients had a specific budget.
correct.
And was that what's noted here, the 1.1 million build?
To build, yes,
And that means to build a house with a budget limited to 1.1 million?
correct.
You said that 80 Mountain Spring Road was not within that budget?
No.
It was more expensive than that?
Yes.
Thank you, I have no further questions.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Good afternoon, good, how are you?
My name is Michelle Manning. I represent the state. We've never met or talked.
No.
before, Right, okay. Just a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay. I actually wanted to ask you a little bit more of the exhibit council just asked you about. You texted Fotis Dulos on May 24th about somebody, a client that's interested to
Yes.
the property?
Yes.
Okay. If I may just approach the clerk here. Okay, 131. Thank you. Did you work with Fotis Dulos often?
Not often, but I did in the past, yes.
Okay. Now, did you have oh, let me just ask you, what was the nature of your employment or, I guess, relationship with him or business relationship with him?
I was not employed by him.
Did you frequently contact him to sell properties or meet with clients?
Not frequently, no.
And on May 24th, was that the first time that you had contacted him for that particular client to see a property or to see 80 Mountain Spring Road?
I don't remember, but I would imagine it would have been, that was the first time I was out with those particular clients.
Okay. If I may just have one moment, Your Honor, the state's intention to show states 131. I think I just have to plug it back in. There you go. And this, do I need to? Yep. Thank you. Now, council showed you some text messages.
Mhm.
If I may just have one moment, Your Honor. On states 134, I'm gonna open file 2 and 3, and actually file titled SMS Fotis Messages. Ma'am, if you can, line 1, do you see the TV in front of you?
Yeah.
Okay. And if you go all the way across here to this column titled Party, do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, right below that, 860-212-7849, is that you?
Yes.
Okay. And the text message here, call me, my client is ready to meet with you to see plans. I want to take him to the home you redid on Mountain Spring as well. Is that your text message to him that day?
Yes.
Okay, and when did you send that?
Would that be the timestamp?
Yes, so that's reflected there, 7:18. Did you send it then in the morning?
I guess so. I
Did
don't
he
remember.
respond right away?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, if I can, I'm gonna actually go down here. Here, did you send him another text message?
I did.
Okay, and that's at 9:02?
Correct.
And that's you as well?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, and it says, call me, my client's ready to meet with you to see plans. I want to take him to the home you redid on Mountain Spring as well. Did you just resend the message?
Yes,
And is that because you got no response?
probably.
Okay. And did you eventually get a response from Mr. Dulos? Do you recall?
I'm sure I did, because
Okay.
we did meet the next day.
And was it later in the day?
I don't remember.
Okay. And I'm actually gonna open the video marked Fotis messages and just fast forward it to here, if I can. And I'm gonna draw your attention over here, ma'am. This says, the phone call, I think this is the 902 one. That's the second phone call, or I'm sorry, not phone call, text message that you sent, Fotis
Yeah.
Dulos?
Yep.
Okay. And over here, it says you sent it at 9:02. Did you get a response after 1:33? Does that refresh your recollection about the time that you sent him? That he responded to you?
That he responded? I don't remember that, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, thank you. Did you also call?
I don't remember that either.
Okay. Either way, you texted him twice that morning and he didn't respond to those text messages?
Yes.
Right. Okay. When you went to 80 Mountain Spring Road on the next day, the 25th? You indicated on direct that you didn't go through the entire property.
Correct.
Okay. And what were you looking at?
The finishes, the type of cabinets, the countertops, the millwork.
Okay. And just to be clear, you don't have any experience in criminal law or criminal investigations?
Me?
Yes.
No.
to this witness?
Well, the court does not know where that question goes. So,
Goes to her observations, Your Honor, which were directly asked about on direct examination.
well, the previous question had to do with what this witness showed her clients, countertops, cabinets, millwork. Then the next question is, you don't have any experience essentially in criminal investigation. So,
I can withdraw, Your Honor, and ask a few foundation questions if I
Thank you.
can. When you were there with clients, right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. How many people were you with?
a husband and a wife.
And you were trying to sell them something?
Correct.
And you were looking at countertops, the finishes, and it's a beautiful property, right?
Correct.
Okay. You weren't looking for evidence of any murder or anything, correct?
No.
Okay, that wasn't even something you were looking for?
Objection.
well, the answer is no.
Okay.
So that would seem to foreclose that line of question.
If I may, ma'am, have you ever been to 80 Mountain Spring Road before?
Have I been there before?
Yes,
Before,
before that day.
yes.
Okay, and you did that often? Did you go often?
No.
Okay. Nothing further, thank you.
No further questions.
Ma'am, you may step down.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
It's Sergeant Christopher Allegro, CHRISTOPHERALLEGRO.
Sergeant, you may be seated.
Thanks, sir.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Allegro.
Good afternoon.
You're here pursuant to a subpoena,
Yes, ma'am.
and you and I spoke for the first time yesterday,
Yes,
pretty late last night,
yes,
and I told you about some questions that I was gonna ask you,
yes,
and you shared that information with the state.
yes.
Can you tell the jury, like, where you're employed, what your rank is? I know you're a sergeant, but just tell them a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been with the Connecticut State Police for 18 years. Obviously had assignments on patrol, resident trooper position, and I was in major crime for 11 years prior to promotion. And now I oversee the background investigative unit.
You now oversee the background investigative unit?
Yes.
All right, before you did that, where did you work and what did you do?
I was a detective assigned to the Western District Major Crime Squad, at first at Troop L, and then down at Troop G for 10 years.
Can you tell the jury what your position was back in May of 2019?
A major crime detective.
And did you play a role in investigating Fotis Dulos?
Yes, he was my primary assignment.
As part of that investigation, did you interview Pavel Gumieni?
Yes, I was part of an interview that was conducted in July of 2019.
July of 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And in that interview, you talked about Fotis Dulos?
Yes,
And also there was some talk about Michelle Troconis.
I believe so.
Did you know at the time that Pavel worked for Fotis Dulos in 2019?
Yes, I did.
And that he had worked for Fotis for many years?
Yes.
What was your purpose in interviewing Pavel Gumieni
Well,
in July of 2019?
The primary detective assigned was Detective Michael Butin, and I was basically a co-chair in the interview. So we do that we utilize 2 detectives when we're conducting interviews.
And that interview that day in July of 2019, was that a lengthy interview?
It was.
About how long did it last?
To the best of my recollection, somewhere in the approximately 8 hours.
During that interview, was Pavel Gumieni represented by counsel?
He was.
Do you remember who that attorney was?
I believe it was Attorney Lindy Urso.
And when you're interviewing people, do attorneys always bring their clients in to talk to?
Judge, I'm just gonna object.
Grounds.
Relevance as to what other attorneys do.
Well, this is preliminary to other matters, so the court will overrule the objection.
You can answer that. Do
I'm sure.
attorneys always bring clients in to meet with you and subject themselves to interviews?
Not often, but it does happen.
And when it does happen, is there a thought that, or did you have a thought in this case that this might be your only opportunity to interview Mr. Gumieni?
It's an objection on relevance.
Well, the question is essentially, this is how the court hears the question. Based on the preliminary question, since this doesn't happen often, did you think this was the only time you'd get to interview Pavel Gumieni? That's how the court hears the question. And the grounds are
Relevance, Judge.
overruled.
You can answer the question.
Could you repeat it,
Yeah,
please?
I can. Did you realize that this may be your only opportunity to interview Mr. Gumieni?
I would say yes.
Was your goal to get as much information as you could from him about things related to this investigation?
Well, Detective Butin was the primary on that, so he had I guess you would say, a series of questions that he needed to have answered, and I was supplemental to those.
All right, so Sergeant, was it Sergeant Butin at the time?
At the time, Detective Butin.
Oh, Detective Butin. Detective Butin had prepared questions to ask Mr. Gumieni at that interview?
Yes,
And you also asked questions?
I did.
And it sounds like, I'm assuming Attorney Urso also asked questions?
I believe so. There was some commentary.
In order to get that information, you used different, did you use different interview techniques?
Well, every interview is unique, so you have to adapt to the information that's provided. So once, questions are asked to elicit responses, you work off of the information that's provided to you from whoever you're speaking with.
And is that what you did in this interview?
Yes.
During that interview, you understood that Mr. Gumeni had some citizenship concerns.
He had expressed that, I believe, in the beginning of the interview, as to his status or green card status, I recall. And, that was made known during the interview.
And part of that was, you had assured him that if you wanted to do that, you could have done that, but you didn't. You could have called immigration.
Just gonna object, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
Well, the question, as the court heard it, is essentially, this witness could have verified Mr. Gumiani's status without talking to Mr. Gumiani about it. That's how the court understands the question. Is that the question, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
Overruled.
You can answer that.
Could you repeat it, please?
Probably not in the same fashion, but did you assure Mr. Gumiani that you hadn't called immigration, and if you wanted to, you would have?
I believe at that stage of the interview was somewhere along onwards and upwards of the 3 hours into it, and there was I guess you could say, an exhale portion, as most of the areas that we needed to cover were, that I was reassuring him that the green card status wasn't something that we were going to be looking into.
Okay. And when you say the exhale portion, can you explain that a little bit to the jury, what you mean by that?
Well, the interview itself started around 10 o'clock in the morning, and it lasted a duration of about 8 hours, so around the 3.5 hour time frame. Most of the information that Detective Butin and myself had to collect was gone over. So at that point, Mr. Gumeni had I guess an exhale moment where he appeared to be relieved.
Do you mind just speaking up a little bit? Can you just repeat that last part of your sentence of what you said?
Well, Mr. Gumeni, after that portion, appeared to be relieved as he was afforded the opportunity to come in with counsel and actually explain some areas that we had some inconsistencies or some concerns about. So they were basically at that point explained from his position, which put them into framework for us, which were reasonable.
And did you ever make any guarantees that he wasn't going to get charged at any point?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And part of your questioning, you asked some open-ended questions?
Typically.
And sometimes, I guess, based on those questions, you ask some specific questions.
Yes.
Was it your understanding at the time that Mr. Gumiani was in there pursuant to any kind of cooperation agreement?
I was unaware of anything like that.
Or any immunity agreement?
Been mentioned to me.
And one of the specific questions, you wanted to know if FOTUS had ever said anything to Mr. Gumiani, anything that might not, whether it was relevant at the time. You were just looking to see tell the jury if you were looking to see whether Mr. Gumiani had any conversations with FOTUS that stick out in his mind. Do you remember asking him some specific questions related to that?
I do.
And was one of those specific questions, if there's something else that you're holding on to, I mean, now is the time. Like if he even said outright, like, fuck that bitch, I'm going to kill her. But anything like that man, do you remember saying that to him?
I do.
All right. During the course, do you know what point in the interview that was that you had said that? Was it maybe in the first 4 hours, second 4 hours?
It was in the second half of it again. As the interview progressed, obviously, more information was uncovered and was able to be, put into context from his perspective. And again, it was reasonable to us. So towards the end, it was more of a I wouldn't call it a lull, but there was a moment where, we were gathering ourselves as there were 4 people in the room. And at which point, knowing that I was the primary assignment for FOTUS Dulos, I took an opportunity to ask him a question, knowing the history that he and Jennifer had, being contentious divorce and whatnot, to see if there was any moments where he had just said something outrageous, whether it was out of frustration or anger or something to that extent in Pavel's presence. And so that's the question that I asked him, to which he replied no.
And did he ever say that Michelle Troconis said anything of that nature?
Judge, I'm just going to object at this point. It's hearsay.
Your Honor, it's Code
Well,
of Evidence 6-5. I'm happy to be heard.
Well, first, the line of questioning is, did you ever say such and such to Mr. Gumieni? And the witness's response was yes. The next question, counsel, repeat it, please.
Whether Mr. Gumieni said at any point during the course of that interview that Michelle Troconis said anything of that nature.
And the objection is hearsay.
It is, Judge, and I'm looking at 6-5. I don't see the applicability, quite frankly.
I'm happy to be heard either in or outside of the jury's presence or at sidebar, Your Honor.
Counsel, you will get an opportunity to be heard. The court's not going to foreclose that. The court is just contemplating the objection. The question really is, during that interview, did Pavel Gumieni ever say that Michelle Troconis said anything like what was reported to? That's the question, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the objection is hearsay. Well, Mr. Gumieni, the evidence is already in that he is under an immunity agreement, has been granted immunity, unless he purges himself, he would have the benefit of that agreement. The question is, did he, who may not have been under the agreement at the time, ever say that Michelle Troconis said something that paralleled what this witness said Otis Dulos could have said? Overruled.
You can answer that.
The interview was obviously 8 hours in duration, and I, to date, have not had an opportunity to review the entire 8 hours, so I cannot be consistent with saying no. However, I do not recall asking him myself a specific question related to Michelle Troconis.
Do you recall, though, the question is whether or not Mr. Gumieni said Michelle said anything of that nature during the course of the interview?
I'd have to review the entire interview in its entirety to make that determination.
Would you like some time to review it?
Well, the court is not going to give the witness time to review an 8-hour interview. The court understands the testimony to be, first, the witness said he does not even recall asking Mr. Gumieni about Michelle Troconis. So the logical inference is that he cannot remember, or Mr. Gumieni didn't say anything like that came from the mouth of Michelle Troconis.
May I ask that question, Your Honor?
Yes.
Do you recall whether Mr. Gumieni said that anything like that was said by Michelle?
I don't recall that.
At some point, the interview ended,
Yes, ma'am.
and at the end of the interview, did you encourage Mr. Gumieni to reach out to you if he thought of anything else or had anything else to say to you?
Yes, typically at the end of an interview, we'll still afford, anybody that's present our contact information to reach out to us should they have additional questions or concerns or information.
And do you remember whether you did that in this case?
Yes.
Did Mr. Gumieni reach out to you at any point from that interview date in July of 2019 to January of 2024?
No.
I have no further questions, thank you.
No questions, Judge.
Sergeant, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, can we approach for
Yes.
logistics for a
Yes.
minute?
We were just discussing the scheduling. And as of right now, we are going to conclude today. It is anticipated, and the court stresses anticipated, that the defense will rest tomorrow. So we conclude today's proceeding. Please report for the session tomorrow, which will begin at 10 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case, and please avoid all media reporting about the case, and have a good evening.